Since its launch in 2005, Broad Street Review has sought to promote the exchange of viewpoints rather than any particular point of view. To that end, we welcome commentary from professionals and amateurs alike about the performing and visual arts, as well as any other field of interest to our eclectic group of contributors. The following interview was submitted to Broad Street Review, powered by Rep Radio. Welcome to Rep Radio. I'm your host, Darnell Radford, and today I'm in Rep Radio's Studio E, and I'm here with Kathryn MacMillan, who you may also know as Casey, and Kathryn is the director of Harold Pinter's Betrayal at the Lantern Theater Company. Kathryn, or Casey, welcome to Rep Radio.
Thanks, Darnell. I'm very happy to be here with you.
I would say when I saw your name in the program as Kathryn, I was like, oh, it's Kathryn now? Are we going to make Kathryn now?
Well, you know, in life, only my mother ever called me Kathryn, and that was only when she was upset with me. But I will say my first professional production, my credit was listed as Casey, and a few of the critics of the time, none of whom are critics in the community anymore, made the assumption that I was a man. It just felt like an important thing to note about the voice making the art, that was a woman's voice.
Very true.
That's why I use it.
Very true. And, I especially now, because we're making we're raising more awareness of the diverse voices in our community. And for me, and I guess I must have been in a fortunate space, I just assumed there was quite a bit of female voices represented in our community. Maybe that was just a bad assumption, or I just might be in the right space, because, that's just how I felt.
Well,
or at least my observation. I can look around and say, yes, great, she's great, she's great, she's great. Yeah.
Well, it's certainly not hard to seek out women's voices, artists of color, young voices. It's certainly not hard to seek out anyone representing perhaps the underrepresented, if like you're interested in those stories and looking for them. But it is sometimes institutionally it can seem more challenging than it ought to bring those voices into the rooms.
But we're working hard, hopefully. Or at least it feels like we're working hard to correct that.
I feel that too. It takes everyone. Yeah.
Yes. So we're here to talk about Betrayal. And so tell us a little bit about it.
Some would call it Harold Pinter's masterpiece. I might be one of those people. It's one of my favorites of his. I love Pinter. Pinter was known for a style... he was often called the master of menace, known for a style that includes a lot of wordplay, not only sort of pauses and silences that he expressly wrote into his scripts, but also repetitions, digressions, non sequiturs. He had a real interest coming of age in the generation that followed greats like Beckett. He had a real interest in the limitations of language and how we use language to hide, to obscure, to attack. This play, when it first premiered in the late 1970s, flummoxed critics in the UK when it premiered because it seemed so different from those plays that felt very strange, menacing, slightly otherworldly, savage, because it was domestic. It is a play that is quite autobiographical, or was quite autobiographical for Pinter, based on a years-long affair he had with a television presenter, Joan Bakewell. And, of course, no one knew at the time that he wrote the play, save for he and Joan and Joan's husband, that it was about them. But, I think because it was a subject very close to Pinter's own life, it feels a little more realistic, a little more real world than some of those early plays. But I would contend that it is every bit as quintessentially Pinter as The Homecoming or No Man's Land or anything that feels a little more spare and savage.
And it's the dialogue is poetic, which points back to his background in poetry as well, which I didn't know much about at all. But just sitting there and experiencing this production for the first time, I was like, it's very poetic. It almost feels like there's information being left out, or it is an assumption that we are a smart audience, and we can fill in those gaps. So then I read a little bit more about Pinter, and that is essentially what he has been, or at least has been said about him, that he gives that space for you without having to spell everything out. But it does often feel like the characters know something that we don't, but at the same time, we can figure it out from what is there and what moments are kind of left for us to just kind of sit with and process. I see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What was your first introduction to Pinter, to the works of Pinter, and specifically this piece?
Well, of course, I read Pinter as an undergraduate, and a graduate student. This is my second time directing Pinter. Also for The Lantern, I directed The Hot House rather early in my directing career in 2008, which was a play from early in Pinter's career as well. Mm-hmm. And I think, comparing those two plays, I think it speaks to exactly what you've said, Darnell, which is, Pinter demands smarts from his audience, and if you come ready to engage with the play, then he'll make everyone feel smart for doing so. And there's a wonderful interplay between things that at first it seems like characters know, and then particularly in a play like Betrayal that charts this love affair between a woman and her husband's best friend. It works backwards. And so you come to a point, at least in Betrayal, midway through, where you and the audience necessarily know things that the characters don't know because they're revealed to them in time.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that Pinter is sort of seldom lauded for, but is very true, is that he makes poetry out of everyday speech. You could play these scenes absolutely naturalistically. People sitting at a table having a conversation. And they are. But if you do as the script asks, and you honor pauses, and you honor silences, which are longer than pauses, and you figure out what fills them, then the whole thing feels elevated and poetic when it is a quotidian encounter. Megan Winch, who was our dramaturg, who's most wonderful, among the research she gave us was an article that recounted the first actors, the premiere production, the actors in the premiere production of Betrayal. And the actor who played Jerry said, "All right, I learned all my lines, and then I realized my work, even in terms of learning the lines, was only half done, because now I have to learn all the pauses if I'm going to figure out what it all means." Because those moments of silence on stage are filled with lies, with questions unasked, with destruction, and it's part of the fun for me was piecing together with my cast, Genevieve Perrier, Jared McClenaghan, and Gregory Isaac, what filled those pauses. And we don't telegraph them to the audience. It's as you say, Darnell, the play expects the audience to mine that world for themselves and find the meaning in them. Yeah, just such fun.
What were some of the conversations that you had during the rehearsal process? Like, what were the thoughts after the first read? And how did you begin to unpack this piece to present it on the stage?
We talked about the characters' backstories. The play is spare. He doesn't give us all the details of the affair. He doesn't give us all the details of the marriage. If you're reading closely, which we all made sure we did, you can find what he thinks those relationships are. And so then we had to talk about it, make sure we were on the same page. We also talked about the many layers of betrayal that exist in the play. Certainly in the plot's surface, the betrayal is, Emma cheating on her husband with Jerry, her husband's best friend. But you also encounter Jerry and the best friend, Robert, talking about who they wanted to be when they were in college. They wanted to be poets, and they were, as Robert says in one scene, bright young men. And so you also get the sense that they've betrayed their young selves by instead becoming titans of the literary world, agents and publishers instead of poets, as you rightly pointed out, Pinter himself was. And of course, friends are betraying friends. And in terms of the secrets that characters keep from one another in the play, wives are betraying husbands, but husbands are also betraying wives, and best friends are betraying one another, and colleagues are betraying each other too. So one of the things we needed to unpack was, it's not the betrayal. Many of his plays have the in the title, The Homecoming, The Hot House. But this one's not. And that was a sly invitation, I thought, to find that, there's more than just one here. There are many, He could have as easily called it betrayals. But, what I think Pinter is pointing out is the abstract concept can be applied in many directions.
Yeah. I think, at least for me, it was interesting to unpack this as the production starts at the end and works its way back. When you get these moments, these snippets of realization in the characters' eyes, when they actually knew what was going on, you start to question. You're like, but why how did the beginning even, how are we even at the beginning if there was all this revelation in the past? And you start to think more about their relationships and say, is there something deeper here? Like, obviously there is this betrayal, and the way we look at it today, there are voices out there that would hear something like this and say, absolutely unacceptable, DTMFA, it's like all of these, we just have to shut this down right now. We cannot. But then you start to wonder, but why? So with all of this coming to mind such earlier on, you start to question why are they still connected? Why are they still drawn to each other when their bonds, in a sense, are broken by these betrayals?
Mm-hmm. But they don't know that when it begins.
Yes.
One of the delights of sitting in the audience during previews is the very last moment of the play. And because it works in reverse chronological order, I'm not giving anything away, I don't think. The last scene of the play, you find the moment that this extramarital affair begins. Mm-hmm. And the very last moment is, a touch that signals that, yes, this affair is going to happen. And sitting in the audience during previews, it delighted me when a few dozen people each night would gasp in that moment. And I wanted to look around and say, folks, you knew this was coming.
Where have you been for the past 80 years?
Well, but it's a sign that everyone is listening. I think it was a reassurance to me of like, okay, I've done my job. I've done my job well, because Pinter wanted to set up this almost, reverse suspense of like, no, it's not going to be worth it. Don't do it. We know things you don't know. And that's what I hear in those gasps. And it's pretty delightful to know you've affected an audience in that way.
Yes. I think the response in that moment where it becomes a revelation, it is revealed, and Jerry's response to Robert as he enters the room, it blows me away in that moment. It's like, what? This is almost an,
Yeah. I don't want to comment on that because I don't want to give too much away.
I know. But in that moment, I thought, I started to look back at all the other scenes.
Yes.
And say, wow,
good.
So then I want to know more about Robert's position because I want to understand how he values both of these people in his life, and in a sense has allowed so much of this to go on when it's arguable that he's been aware the whole time.
Yeah, those were conversations that Greg, who played Robert, that Greg and I had. And I want to be a little coy about how I comment on that, because that you wonder, you have these questions, Darnell, is exactly where I wanted audience to be at the end of the play. So, yay, that means I also did my job well. But yes, we staged the final moments of the play. Our attempt was to ask you to question, like, wait, what? You know, things you learn midway through the play. We wanted you to wonder, because I think Pinter wanted you to wonder or question, like, wait, did I get that right? Could this have been different this whole time? And not just for Robert, but for all the characters. You know, you meet Jerry, who's the friend, and he seems a little flummoxed by life and a little behind and not quite as quick, and certainly not the alpha male of the room. And then you see him at the end, perhaps caught having kissed the wife of his friend, perhaps not. And the way he so quickly jumps into a full-throated defense, where he plays the buffoon, where he plays the court jester, says that maybe we got Jerry wrong too. And so I love those questions. You know, I always like a play that leaves you chattering with the person you came with down the stairs, out the door, onto the subway, or, you know, into your car on the walk home. So I think it's a bold thing Pinter did, to leave you with questions instead of tying everything up neatly in a bow. And so part of my work is to try and honor that artistic mandate, you know?
For today, I was thinking about the comedies that sort of pick up, that sort of begin in the middle, and then they say, let me give you a little backstory. And then they kind of step back and then bring us up to the point of where the piece started, whether it's a movie or a play. And then they carry forward. Only in this case, we're at the end, at the beginning, but there is a revelation that all of this came to light probably about halfway through.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're waiting to get back there, but we go even further to find out, you know, that it was even deeper than that. So, like, the official, I guess, confession or admitting, you know, happened several years back. But even further back were all of these signs. And I do like how the piece points out all these elements of things they did and items they acquired. And, you know, and there's these moments where Jerry sort of trips up in his response to something that Robert may have said to him. And it's like, but I thought you, never mind.
Never mind.
Never mind. But I thought you went to no, you didn't.
Yeah, we had fun investigating those things. And I love that you mentioned sort of the things they acquire, because isn't that something that we do in relationships? That's something that marks the tenure of a relationship, is the stuff you seem to acquire together. And I don't know, that always sort of like turns up my dramaturgical nerddom. John Wendling, who is our props designer, there's during the affair, Emma and Jerry acquire a tablecloth sort of for the little flat where they're carrying on their affair. And thinking about how much time had passed, I asked John, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to need 2 tablecloths. One that's bright white and new, and one that's a little aged. And I don't expect anyone to, like, notice it specifically, but it's the kind of detail work I kind of love to play with designers, with actors of...
Like, someone will wash this with coffee grounds.
Yeah, exactly, or tea or whatever he did. And, it all adds up to the feeling of rightness, you know, that you've captured a world justly, whether or not you're sort of noticing each thing. And Pinter is a world that really, like, invites that kind of level of detailed investigation in the performances and in the design, too, which is fun.
Yeah, that was mind-blowing. I mean, to think about that they they went as far as to create a space for this betrayal as well. It seems like it's, well, I guess in that time frame, it would be easier to kind of do that, but I don't know. I'm thinking like I can barely afford where I live right now. We've got a little flat on the side over here, and I just escape to that when no one's looking, or we can just we have a rendezvous point that we're maintaining, and it's just like, yeah. I mean, I think it would be so easy to say, didn't I buy a set of plates? And where are those plates? Just an absent-minded moment. Did you see those knives that I bought from the thing? Like, what are you talking about?
I'm
they were right.
so with you. My husband and I joke, we've been married going on 12 years, and we joke that we would never have an affair because that just sounds exhausting.
Exactly.
Not just keeping up the lies, but just sort of, I don't know, keeping up your person.
Yeah.
Like, the beauty of marriage is, I don't know, letting some of that go.
But then, you're right. But then with that thought, this is where, so I had one thought of, there's something interesting going on, the dynamic between the three of them, that they all know bits and pieces of this information. And they allow this sort of, if it's not confessed in open air, then, we're okay. We're okay to move forward in this. But then at the same time, you're like, what kind of people allow such a thing?
British people
to happen. Yeah, and then you have to look back at the 60s and the 70s and what was happening there. Just got out of war. It's like baby boomers are coming of age. There's this mindset of like, we have more freedom now than we had before. So there is this there's this openness that almost says we're entitled to this because of what we've gone through as a society for so long, up to this point.
Yeah, that's nicely said.
You think about that too, but that's where I start to think about the relevance of today, because right now we're talking about, every 5 seconds we're finding that somebody has been unfair, and we're immediately ready to dismiss them from society altogether without really finding out, the story underneath. Mm-hmm. Because, we know that there are many reasons for infidelity, and none of it is, it's justified in someone's minds, much like, because now we watch all of these superhero films and TV series, so we understand that there is a justification of a villain, so when we're looking at someone as being the quote bad guy, there is some justification in there, and those pauses, those moments of silence that Pinter provides, is where that's what I fill that space with. Those interesting moments, and there's probably several other plays that could be written here. I don't know that anybody wants to see them. But maybe there was a rough draft where 40 pages came out of this, and it ended up being this tight 90-minute piece.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, it is set in London in the late 60s into early 70s. And, I think it is, while a universal and a classic, a product of its time. Mm-hmm. Divorce in Great Britain had only been legal a few years. It was not legal when the chronology of the play began. So there was this sort of explosive feeling of freedom by the end of I don't know, the span of the play for getting out of a bad situation that wasn't there when the play started, which the play's first audiences would have absolutely known and understood and been a fabric of their experience, know. In 68, it wasn't so easy to get out of a marriage, and it wasn't easy for a woman to get out of a marriage. Mm-hmm. And also, it was in the full heat of the sexual revolution, and, the world was changing. Technology was quite a different experience than technology in our lives. My husband can... hit find my phone, or call my stage manager only to find that she and I are having a glass of wine after rehearsal, or or we text each other. We can be in touch any moment of the day, and it that wasn't true in the 70s. You came home after 9-10 hours apart, and you had a bit of independence, a bit of mystery, a bit of secretiveness, and I don't know. I wonder if there's something that's lost by constant connectivity, not the option to cheat on your partner or spouse, but
space.
Space. Yeah. Do we technologically have any space just to think? I don't feel like I do. And I can only speak for myself when I say I've trained myself out of having a capacity for it, for space, for boredom. I have 2 minutes waiting in line and I'm on my phone playing a word scramble game, or I'm, I think that there is a bit of swing and freedom of that era that is lost.
Yeah, and now we're sort of there's this gamification of life now, and we have this mindset that it's fun to check in and be the leader of a space that you don't own, but because you've checked in more times than anyone else. But at the same time, you're being traced. Everybody knows where you are. And so I remember when Foursquare was like a big, social media app. It's still around, but just not as widely used. But, you could check in to your house. And first of all, why would you do that? Now everybody knows where you live.
Right.
And they can tell when you're leaving. Off to walk the dog,
Yeah, come steal my TV.
Yeah, exactly. She's leaving now. She leaves every day at 6 o'clock. It's like clockwork. Yeah. And that's why it was, again, interesting about having this today, because ultimately what would allow all of this to go on for so many years would be shut down in, like, what was it? It was almost 10 years that we look back on. Like, this would be gone in like 20 minutes. It would be figured out. You would have 4 other people on text message. You would have someone on the phone. Someone's on their way to your house to like mediate. And you would figure out before the end of the night that this has to end, because and not your affair, us.
Yeah.
We have to end because, for one, I feel betrayed. And I cannot allow this to move forward. The fact that, we obviously were not connecting in some way, that you needed to go somewhere else to get whatever it is you're getting from them, without even talking to your partner about it to figure out, if there's something that you can't, I didn't know. Now, let me provide that for you, or anything. But there's all these thoughts that would go on in your head about, where you would then make it about yourself, instead of realizing that there's something else here that we need to understand. I feel like today we would have a hard time just trying to sit down and understand how this started, why it started, and why it continued, and what allowed us to assume that everything was great on one level, and then we had this secret on another level.
Yeah, it's not just a play of its time, but it's also a very British play. I was at a post-show talkback this weekend, and someone said, "What would this play if it were written by an American?" I think it was Genevieve who answered, like, "Oh, there would be fisticuffs. There, someone would throw a table. There'd be screaming. It'd all be on the surface." It's I think part of the sort of the delectable mystery for us as an American audience, as well as an audience in 2019, is discovering why these people behave as they do, and I think the way the unions hold together, or the way they find themselves in maintaining relationships after a betrayal has been discovered, it says a lot about how controlled a culture they are, how how winning the game, because the whole thing feels very much like a game, actually. Winning is whoever keeps their temper and sort of stays the coolest or looks the smartest, which is, I don't know, generally not the kind of games Americans like to play. You know, our winning looks different. Our winning would be to play out the scene and throw a drink in someone's face.
Yes.
Which sounds fun.
Because we have this concern about being found out and at the same time saving face.
Yeah.
So it's like, I hope no one else knows, were you walking around just nonchalantly having an affair, like out in the public so that everybody could see? Because if so, now I feel embarrassed. But if so, but at the same time, it's like, I want to make, there's a part of you, the one that's angry about this revelation, would feel like I need to have the upper hand here. So I need to make a scene before.
The play does, in its sly way, it does address that. It's in that first scene of the play, Jerry says to his former lover Emma that no one knew. He's heard. He's asking her about gossip. He's heard that she is having a new affair with a writer, one of her husband's published writers, actually, and because he's heard some gossip about it. And he says, it was irritating because no one gossiped about us in those days. No one knew we were brilliant. And I think the play invites you to ask, we also find out in that scene that her marriage has fallen apart. Is there some relationship between public gossip about who she's sleeping with and the fact that her marriage is finally over? Is that part of what counted with Robert, with her husband? Is that part of what made it okay for her to be with Jerry? Is that he wasn't publicly cuckolded, or it lingers there too. I think there also is, just in the game of who is the most toxically manly, somehow being, not being found out counts for them as well as for us.
So I wanted to talk about intimacy, because your production has an intimacy choreographer. And this is the first time I've seen that in the playbill. So talk a little bit about adding an intimacy choreographer and what it brought to the production.
It brought so much. It made such a difference in our storytelling, in the respect and safety that was just in the fabric of the room. Colleen Hughes is our intimacy choreographer, and she's quite brilliant. It's work that was established more than 15 years ago, but only in the last few years has it sort of really risen to a national level of conversation. And it's just this season that I've seen it in playbills, that I've noted, not only at the Lantern, but Eli Lynn recently was intimacy choreographer for a show at Theater Exile, I think. And it's really important work. I received, as a director, in graduate school, no training on how, say, to stage a moment that involved physical contact, intimate physical contact with actors, or touch in that way. Like, I wasn't given a best practices or a rule book of how to make a room sort of safe. And so I personally have always felt a little, sheepish about telling the stories of those moments. And I feel pretty confident that no actor working with me was ever made to feel disrespected or uncomfortable or coerced in any way. But I think probably we all felt that the story didn't proceed to the level of intimacy or heat that was required by the play because of my discomfort. So having Colleen, who sort of who has protocols, who makes every actor an equal participant in the use of their own bodies and wills on stage, manages actually to achieve a remarkable heat and passion in the play, because there is a language around telling those stories that is every bit as normalized and regulated as if we were doing fight choreography. Yeah. No director is ever going to put two actors in a room and say, okay, there's a fake punch here, or there's a slap. Just do what you feel. But a shocking number of directors have given that piece of direction about intimacy, about kiss, about touch. and about a caress. And so, yeah, we broke things down into frameworks through which we could explore in real normalized ways to tell the story. And I will never work without her again.
And it added to this poetic feel of the piece as well. And you would notice those. They were very pronounced. And you're like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
It does feel like, and now we're going to pause for an embrace.
Yeah.
And now we're going to pause for a longing look.
Well, certainly I hope it didn't feel like it felt like it wasn't in the fabric of the storytelling. I think if there's sort of like pauses or elevations, I would hope to draw attention to those moments because they fell at key moments in the plays, at beginnings and ends of scenes. The suggestion being that these are leading to other moments, moments of heat, moments that are potentially even uncomfortable between a couple. So yeah, it was a part of an overall transition aesthetic I was working with of like, and now this is set to music, and now this is sort of swelling into the transition, and so hopefully that's what that's what audiences feel when they see those.
Those moments felt important.
Good.
And it felt like very quickly you quickly shuffle through the scene you just experienced to make sense of this moment. At least that's what it felt like for me. And I was sitting on I forget what side that is, under the
balcony there.
The balcony,
B.
Yeah. B. And I was sitting over there. I'm just like,
Yeah.
There were a lot of mms for me.
Oh, good. Little flutters are good.
Yes.
Yeah, it's the Pinter is not explicit about telling you why Emma has an affair, why she cheats on her husband. And so it felt like our job to sort of really tease out the hints that he gives that she's definitely not getting something from Robert that she gets from being with Jerry. And so that was a big part of the intimacy work that we did with Colleen as well, of telling different stories of their sexual lives and why she might have found something with Jerry that she's not getting.
Yeah.
Tenderness, laughs,
Oh, and that moment where Robert makes note of his bond to Jerry in comparison to his bond to Emma was like, whoa, wait a minute. You can't leave the room without explaining that. What are you, Gemini or something? You can't just say that and see.
Yes, there's a hint that, well, Robert does say at one point that, he likes Jerry more than he likes Emma. He says it to hurt his wife, but I think he means it. And there is a thread of potential unexamined attraction between these two friends it's I want to tell the surprising story of how this love scene, or how this is not only a love story about an illicit affair, but kind of a repressed love story, sexual and otherwise, between these two long-term friends, and what they need from each other, and why they don't want to give each other up either, even when it seems like circumstances should mean that they should.
It is kind of interesting when you look back on a piece that wasn't written in the last 10 years or so, and you start to identify these elements of what we now call a bromance. They were always there. The intimacy, this bond that was strong, and today because we put a label on it, we attach so much else to it. But people have had these connections, have always had these connections. But looking back on them, you're like, oh, there was so much more there. And so how do we process that? Because it's not always about sex. But there is a connection that you're allowed to have.
Yeah.
With many people. And you've got to understand what they are and where they come from and why they're so strong.
That relationship, the play demands that relationship be strong, because Robert, the plot reveals, is equally betrayed by his wife as his friend. And So that says that our job as storytellers is to make sure we reveal how important that friend relationship is. Not, oh, he's my friend, but you're my wife, and this is the primary relationship. It doesn't feel like that's necessarily true.
Mm-hmm.
And the play explores that in really sort of beautiful ways.
Yeah. And so I'll wrap this up by asking you, what presents a sense of urgency for you as an artist that motivates you to make the choices that you make creatively and move forward through life as you do?
That's a lovely question. I'd like to say things that are true, you know? I think the job of a director is an interpretive artist. It's my job to start a conversation with the playwright, whether it's a person I get to interact with or work on the page, as it is with Pinter. I want to make sure I know what that play is asking of me and my fellow artists before I start talking about it through the art. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And in saying things that are true, that sometimes means finding yourself at the center of a play that you didn't realize was about you, or finding yourself at the center of a universe that you didn't think you understood before. Whether it's, oh, this play is my life, or, oh, this play is about a life I've had no access to heretofore, and the profundity that can come out of that experience. It was Sunday of previews that I was sitting probably in a bank of seats around about a dozen women over the age of 80, would be my guess. This play being set in the 70s, they are Emma's age. And there was a scene between the husband and the wife, a confrontation scene. And these women, and they weren't all there together, they were just scattered through the audience. They were giggling all through it, these knowing giggles. And I thought, well, you get yours, ladies over 80. Clearly you were in this terrible relationship 40 years ago. And look at you. You made it. You made it to the other side. And now you can laugh at that bastard who made you feel so terrible. Good. You know, it was a thing I didn't even see in that scene until I saw it through the eyes of women now in 2019 who would be Emma's age if she were real. That tickles me. Yeah, I guess I want to tell the story no matter the genre, no matter the style, that tells the truth about what it means to be a human. And one of the delightful learning experiences I get as a cisgendered white woman in her early 40s is that I get to be part of stories that tell truths that I am not the expert on. And leading a room doesn't necessarily mean telling the story exactly as I see it. And I'm finding real joy and education for myself in making sure that the rooms that I lead are democratic, that make space for artists to be heard and to speak the truth about the world as they see it. And I think for some artists, it can feel easier to take shortcuts, but that will keep you from telling the truth. It will keep your collaborators from feeling respected and valued and heard. And it'll age you. So I don't know. I'm in a really, my mandate right now is to say what I think is true, but also sometimes keep my ears open and keep my mouth shut, and listen to what others have to say as well.
Yeah. All right. Kathryn MacMillan, director, Betrayal by Harold Pinter. It's on stage at Lantern Theater Company. You can get tickets and more information by going to lanterntheater.org, and that's theater ER. Kathryn, thank you so much for taking the time and unpacking this with me. This was very insightful, very eye-opening, and I really enjoyed this conversation.
I did too. Thank you, Darnell. It was great to talk with you.
Want to get involved with Broad Street Review? Head on over to our website at www.broadstreetreview.com and click Get Involved at the top. While you're there, help keep us running and click Contribute to find out how. Connect with us on social media on Facebook and Twitter at Broad Street Review. Thank you for helping to keep the conversation going.